up today, South Korea and Ethiopia see eye to eye on the need to denuclearize North Korea. The two sides also sign economic cooperation deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Visiting UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon calls on North Korea to break its cycle of provocations. He also urges Asia's major powers to work together for the sake of peace and prosperity. Plus, the global economy, international terrorism, the refugee crisis and North Korea dominate discussions at the G7 summit in Japan. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Friday, May 27th here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. We begin in Ethiopia, where President Park Geun-hye is continuing the first leg of her three-nation tour of East Africa, meeting Ethiopian Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn on Thursday. The South Korean leader reiterated the need to press North Korea to abandon its nuclear ambitions, which pose a serious threat to Northeast Asia and the wider world. In response, Ethiopia's Prime Minister said his country has always and will continue to support the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and help spread the initiative to other countries in Africa through its influence on the continent. He also pledged to sincerely fulfill UN Security Council sanctions on North Korea, saying Ethiopia always stands on the side of the South. Now, as well as discussing North Korea, the leaders of the two countries also vow to boost their bilateral economic ties as a means of ensuring mutual growth in the future. For more details, our Song Ji-sun reports from Addis Ababa.
President Park and Ethiopian Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn are set to deal dozens of deals on Thursday. Among the agreements is a planned textile complex covering 100 hectares or 1 square kilometer, expected to give Korean investors a competitive edge in production costs.
Ethiopia has a strong textile industry with production costs that are about 30% of that in China. Korea's entry into the Ethiopian market will enable us to send exports to the US and the EU without tariffs.
Seoul will take a greater role in Ethiopian infrastructure projects, especially in transportation, power generation, and urban development, while sharing its knowledge in high value-added sectors like science and technology, energy, e-government, and customs. Another highlight of the president's state visit is the launch of Korea-Aid, a new official development aid program offering food, health, and cultural services on wheels.
In our bid to support Africa's ability to achieve its Sustainable Development Goals for 2030, adopted at the UN last year, Seoul will launch Korea-Aid, a comprehensive development project that covers healthcare, food and culture, leaving no area left behind.
By taking an active role in supporting Ethiopia's growth and transformation plan, Seoul reinforced its comprehensive partnership with the African country for mutual growth, paving the way to enter the continent considered the last blue ocean in the world. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News, Addis Ababa.
Now, keeping our eyes on Ethiopia, media outlets in the East African nation have been comprehensively covering President Park Geun-hye's visit. For more on the reactions, not only in print, but also on the small screen, our Kim Hae-sung reports.
The arrival of President Park Geun-hye in Ethiopia has prompted the local media to widely cover the historic visit, emphasizing the importance of bilateral cooperation between the two countries. The Ethiopian Herald, the nation's state-run daily, published an op-ed by President Park on Wednesday stressing that Korea will stand as Ethiopia's reliable partner on its path towards growth and development. The newspaper laid out President Park's vision of bilateral cooperation, the launching of the Korea-Aid program, while sharing Korea's Semaul Undong rural development movement and increasing cultural and people-to-people exchanges. The Ethiopian Herald also published an editorial on Thursday titled Bolstering Ethiopia-Korea Economic Societal Cooperation, describing the two countries' historical relationship and how Park's state visit will expedite their socio-economic ties. The Ethiopian state-run broadcaster EBC also covered President Park's visit and introduced Korea as a nation that successfully achieved industrialization and democratization in the short span of 50 years. Another local paper, the Addis Zemen, outlined President Park's itinerary and our meetings with Ethiopian leaders. In particular, the daily newspaper emphasized the significance that the Korea-Ethiopia Economic Forum will have to boost bilateral relations. President Park's state visit is scheduled from May 25th to May 28th and is expected to further boost socio-economic development in areas such as investment, trade, and culture between the two countries. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
Now, later on this Friday, President Park Geun-hye will take another historic step to further strengthen Korea's strategic partnership with the African continent. She will become the first South Korean leader to address the African Union Commission at its headquarters in Addis Ababa. There, she will lay out Seoul's new policy approach toward Africa, noting the massive untapped potential of the continent. Officials say her vision will be aimed at achieving mutual growth through economic cooperation, sustainable peace and security, while expanding exchanges in culture and people. Before her speech, President Park will also sit down with the head of the African Union Commission to discuss ways to reaffirm the two sides' comprehensive partnership. We here at Arirang TV are going to be broadcasting the President's speech to the African Union live and in full with English translation. So to watch some history unfold in front of you, tune in from 4 p.m. Korea time this afternoon. That's in around 10 hours from now. Now, in other news, UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon had a strong message for North Korea on Thursday at the opening ceremony of the 11th Jeju Forum. The UN chief also expressed his hopes for Asia's biggest players to work more closely together. Gwon-swa, who is following the forum for us, filed this report from Jeju.
The Jeju Forum for Peace and Prosperity is currently underway on South Korea's southernmost island of Jeju, and the Korean peninsula is one of the places where peace is needed the most, as the two Koreas remain divided, with North Korea's nuclear and missile threats not showing signs of stopping anytime soon. That's why UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon took the opportunity during his keynote speech at the event on Thursday to call on Pyongyang to end its provocations and fulfill its international obligations.
The DPRK's pursuit of nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles only undermines its own security and hurts its own citizens. Military spending remains high while children are wasting. Human rights are systematically abused. The authorities of the DPRK must correct these wrongs. We must find a path back to dialogue.
Pan also expressed hope for greater cooperation in Asia, calling it a powerful continent that's critical to securing prosperity and security across the globe. He also said he wished that a 7th trilateral summit between South Korea, China, and Japan would be held as soon as possible. In line with this, a group of former prime ministers from Japan, Malaysia, Singapore, New Zealand, and Italy shared their views on Asia's leadership as well as the challenges ahead for South Korea.
Should tensions escalate in the Korean Peninsula or between the US and China, the ROK will be caught in between. How can the ROK avoid such a scenario? And can the ROK be solely dependent on the US security umbrella, important as it is? These are important questions that the ROK leadership, both present and future, will have to think about.
Now, the UN Secretary-General will have to think about whether he wants to become part of that leadership, as rumors of him running for the presidency of South Korea have been filling the air in Jeju. Pan has left the island for the G7 summit in Japan, but many will be fixated on his every move when he's back in Korea over the weekend, searching for clues to his political future. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News, Jeju.
Now, the G7 summit will start its second and final day later on this Friday. World leaders are in Japan to discuss a range of issues, from the state of the global economy to the growing threat posed by North Korea. Kwon Jung-ho has more.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe greeted the heads of state from the US, France, Germany, UK, Italy and Canada, as well as the leaders of the EU as they arrived to open the latest G7 summit held in the peaceful region of Iseshima, Japan. Over 2 days, in between various photo opportunities, the world leaders will discuss various issues ranging from international terrorism and the global refugee crisis to Beijing's territorial claims in the South China Sea. The biggest topic on the first day was the struggling global economy. G7 members have come to the summit at odds with each other's fiscal policies. Nations like the UK and Germany have taken austerity measures in recent years, whereas the Japanese government has favoured spending, pumping cash into the economy. The US is also in a conflicting stance with Japan over currency manipulation, with Tokyo wanting to continue weakening the yen to help its exporters.
We rigorously debated the global economy this time, and we agree that it faces a great risk at this moment.
North Korea is another hot topic at the summit. Speaking to the press Thursday afternoon, US President Obama stressed the risk that Pyongyang poses to the international community.
North Korea is a big worry for all of us. They're not at the point right now where they can effectively hit US targets. But each time that they test, even if those tests fail, they learn something.
The G7 leaders are expected to strongly call on Pyongyang to fully comply with the latest UN security resolution in Friday's joint communiqué. Friday will also see an outreach meeting where various nations not in the G7 will be attending, including Indonesia and Vietnam, along with leaders of global organizations such as the UN and the World Bank. Immediately after the summit, President Obama will make the controversial visit to Hiroshima to lay a wreath at the Peace Memorial Park. Kwon Jung-ho, Arirang News.
Now, miners in North Korea are said to be working under brutal conditions and suffering a wide range of human rights violations. This is according to Kim Kwang-jin, who is a North Korean defected term researcher at South Korea's Institute for National Security Strategy, who has released a report titled Gulag Incorporated, the Use of Forced Labour in North Korea's Export Industry. Now, his report says the vast majority of labourers in the mines are political prisoners and men from a social class considered politically unreliable. These groups are forced to work in extremely harsh environments because of their low social status. The report says they are deprived of the basic freedom to get married and start a family, let alone pursue any kind of personal happiness. The report said there's a pressing need to strengthen controls on North Korea's mining exports to protect the rights of countless North Koreans forced to labour in those mines. It's now official. Donald Trump has secured enough delegate support to seize the Republican Party's presidential nomination. The Associated Press reported Thursday that Trump has the backing of 1,238 delegates, one more than the 1,237 needed. Trump has been the GOP's presumptive presidential nominee since early this month, when he won the primary in Indiana and his remaining rivals dropped out. Now, the Republican convention set for mid-June will become the official stage giving the nomination to the business mogul turned politician. There are 5 remaining primaries, including the states of California, Montana and New Jersey. For hundreds of years, women from Korea's southern island of Jeju have made their living braving the elements, diving deep into the sea to harvest seafood from the ocean floor. Moon Gon-young sheds light on these women divers. They are called Haenyeo, as well as the culture and history of Jeju itself.
Jeju. Lying 64 kilometers south of the Korean peninsula, the island of Jeju has traditionally been referred to as Samdado, or land of 3 abundances: roaring winds, magnificent rocks, and women. Not just any women, but women who've been free diving into the sea for centuries and generations to feed the children, to support the family, for survival. On a chilly spring morning in May, 72-year-old Lee Sung-mae and her village sisters head out for their daily routine. As they have for the past 60 years, they wipe their goggles with a fistful of mugwort and jump into the darkness of the deep sea.
My mother was a Haenyeo, my sister-in-law is a Haenyeo, and I also learned to dive here.
I educated my children with the money earned from harvesting underwater.
They are Haenyeo, female divers of Jeju who take to the ocean as deep as 10-20 meters without any special diving or breathing equipment. For ages, they've braved the treacherous waters of the Korea Strait, using only flippers and goggles as they scour the sea bottom for abalone, conch, and octopus. No one knows for sure how the Haenyeo of Jeju Island became the primary breadwinners of their families. But in a country where Confucianism has left indelible patriarchal mark everywhere, Haenyeo culture has long bucked conventional gender roles on the island. When they're not in the ocean, they grow crops and harvest the land, do household work and take care of the children.
Women have a lot of work to do in Jeju. We give birth to children, feed them, send them to school. We go harvesting underwater, farm when we're not in the ocean. Preparing for these ancestral rites is also our job.
Sometimes I feel bad that men just stay at home when the women are in the icy water, but it's always been that way here.
Traditionally a job handed down from mother to daughter, Haenyeo life has been shunned in recent decades as more girls tend to favor more comfortable lives in the city.
Diving in the sea is such a harsh, low-esteem job. Holding your breath, going underwater, it's strenuous. Why would the young ones want to take it on?
As the average age of Haenyeos grows, and many already well into their 80s, that lineage is fading, leaving many wondering just for how long this unique tradition can continue. Moon Gon-young, Arirang News, Jeju.
Well, that's all we have for now on this Friday morning here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.